back.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President, and I thank Senator Waters for presenting the report in her capacity as Chair of the Committee. By way of history, this came before the Senate in the 44th Parliament, co-sponsored by then Senator Joe Bullock from Western Australia and myself at the request of interested parties, particularly concerned parent groups. With the lapsing of the 44th Parliament, the matter was then raised with the committee in the 45th Parliament, and I thank the committee for its indulgence, Acting Deputy President, in allowing this report to proceed. There were significant and several submissions had been placed by concerned people around Australia, and committee members accepted the view that it would be logical, although time did not permit for the committee to actually have hearings around Australia, that the Secretariat be directed to prepare a report based on those submissions. And so therefore I thank the Chair, Senator Waters, and I particularly, as an original mover of the motion, thank the Secretariat of this committee for the excellent work they undertook in preparing the report that is before you today. Acting Deputy President, this issue of pornography relating to children, but particularly online pornography, is one that is of deep concern and interest to all of us, whether we are simply community members, whether we are parents, or indeed, in your case and mine now, Acting Deputy President, whether you are a grandparent. Of course, there are state and federal matters to be considered, and the recommendations to which I will refer in a moment pick up the joint responsibility of federal and state entities in protecting children against the vicious and heinous crimes associated with pornography as they affect children. State jurisdictions, federal jurisdictions, many of us in this parliament, be it in the other place or in the Senate, have a deep interest and concern, particularly as it relates to the ignorance of parents and of children. To support that, I can just simply make the comment of my colleague, the member for Forrest, Ms Nola Marino, who for some years now has been conducting seminars in schools with the concurrence of teachers, administrators, parents and children, and she will go through, usually supported by local police personnel, and the number of times Ms Marino has said to me that either on the day after or within days of such seminars being conducted, either parents or children themselves will come forward and say, "I didn't realise I was being groomed for sex as a result of the activities that have been undertaken by these terrible people." And so, Acting Deputy President, if I can go to the 4 recommendations that came out of this inquiry, and again can I record our appreciation to those who put in submissions, upon which the Secretariat and the committee drew heavily in the report and its recommendations. The first, the committee recommends the Australian Government commission dedicated research into the exposure of Australian children and young people to online pornography and other pornographic material. And I'll go immediately to the second recommendation before I comment on them, because it relates obviously, and the second recommendation of the committee is that following the completion of this research referred to in recommendation 1, the committee recommends the Australian Government commission an expert panel to make recommendations to government regarding possible policy measures, and that the panel should include experts in a range of relevant fields, including child protection, children's online safety, education, law enforcement and trends in internet usage. It's not often in this place, Acting Deputy President, that the very suggestion that a report might be tabled seems to have prompted the government of the day to actually, and through Minister Cash only this afternoon, did we have the announcement of the government appointing a new e-safety commissioner, Ms Julie Inman-Grant, and the announcement of the fact that the commissioner's role will be renamed, or that of the office will be renamed to the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner, reflecting the role and the fact that it will be extended to take on responsibility for online safety issues affecting adults as well, without in any way diminishing the importance of the role and the focus on children, and bringing into that whole space the issue of cyberbullying material, which we know, of course, is targeting and is harmful to the Australian child, and that will remain solely a focus of this particular Commissioner's role. And in supporting that, I note, if I may quote today from a release of the Law Council of Australia, in which that council is welcoming the announcement of the government on new initiatives to tackle, and in their words, the 21st century scourge, in this case of revenge pornography, and it has the support of the legal sector. And that particular release goes on to make further comment about that. So it's wonderful that we are focusing Acting Deputy President in several fora related to do this. If I can go to the third of 4 recommendations, and as I mentioned earlier, it does relate to drawing the states and territories into the report and its recommendations. And recommendation 3 recommends the state and territory governments consider the adequacy of their current policies on and responses to allegations of sexual abuse perpetrated by children within schools, and the training provided on child protection matters to individuals employed in roles that could involve children. The committee heard in evidence through submission, Acting Deputy President, of the heinous circumstance of a child perpetrating sexual activities upon another child in a location to which children were being protected, only then to learn upon investigation that the child had seen the pornography that they were now practising on the victim child in the company of their father, whilst the father and the child were watching pornographic material. Where have we got to in this space, in this country, when an adult, a parent, sits their child, their vulnerable child, down to watch pornography as part of some social interaction, and then to see the circumstance where that child plays out with no understanding at all, of course, as we all know about the actions it's taking, plays out those fantasies on another child. So if those who don't think this issue is real need to reflect very carefully on that instance that was presented to us in evidence in a submission. And the final recommendation, Acting Deputy President, probably comes from the sort of ignorance that somebody like myself has in this space, because we obviously didn't grow up in the internet electronic age. It's one that we join, it's one that we go into and visit, whereas we know the child and young people of today, of course, they don't visit the internet, it is of them. And the recommendation is this, number 4, that the committee recommends the Australian government consider the adequacy of the information available to parents, guardians and teachers on how to keep children safe online, including whether existing resources, such as the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner's iParent website, can be promoted more effectively. The thought behind that recommendation, Acting Deputy President, is if parents or grandparents or carers or those with responsibility for children have a concern, to whom or to where do they turn to get the tools that they can actually use to keep the child or children under their care safe? Acting Deputy President, I commend the report again to the Senate. I just wish in conclusion to reference our very good friend and colleague, Ms Jo Lindgren, who through the 44th Parliament was Senator Jo Lindgren. She rang me in advance of the decision being made for the committee to progress, and she said, "Chris, I've gone back into the classroom since I've returned from the Senate," and she said, you would not believe the level of pornography in playgrounds, in classrooms, and you would not believe the level of language to which children have stooped, very often in total ignorance of the words they're using. And it was Jo Lindgren's appeal to me who said, please, whatever you can do, get the committee to proceed towards a report. So again, I thank the Chair, Senator Waters, and I commend the report to the Senate.